The alien queen watched her human consort unleash his might, and realized she demarried a legend. The Zalarian Empire, ruled by the wise and powerful Queen Ciliara, had long been considered untouchable. Her people were disciplined, intelligent, and proud. Their civilization was built over thousands of years, and the empire's boundaries reached beyond dozens of star systems. No outsider had dared challenge them, until now. Commander Elias Kane, a human diplomat and soldier, floated in the observation deck of the starcruiser Horizon, the human vessel that had carried him across the void of space. Unlike most humans, Elias had grown up trained for extremes. From a young age, he had learned to survive, to think, and to lead. That training had made him sharp, alert, and calm even in the face of uncertainty. The Horizon approached the Zalarian capital, a city of gleaming towers and flowing energy bridges suspended above a pale green planet. The city shimmered with a beauty that was both alien and majestic. Elias could feel the weight of history in every structure. It was a world that had seen millennia pass, and now humans, often underestimated, were arriving at its gates. "Commander Kane," said Lieutenant Myra, a young officer from the Horizon, her voice breaking the silence, "the Zalarians are ready for your arrival. The Queen has personally requested your presence." Elias nodded. He had expected nothing less. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, but Earth had gained recognition through courage and innovation. Elias carried the responsibility of his species on his shoulders, and he would not falter. The docking bay doors opened with a quiet hum, revealing a corridor lined with smooth, metallic walls that seemed to glow faintly. Zalarians moved with a grace that was almost unnatural, their movements precise and deliberate. Their eyes were large and luminous, and their skin shimmered with subtle colors that shifted with emotion. To an outsider, they seemed otherworldly, but Elias saw beyond appearances. He understood that intelligence and character were what truly mattered. When he entered the main chamber, Queen Ciliara awaited him. She was taller than most humans, with elegant features and eyes that seemed to pierce into his very thoughts. Her presence radiated authority. Around her, advisors and guards stood silently, their attention fixed on the human before them. "Commander Kane," Ciliara said, her voice melodic but firm, "you are far from home. Humans are bold to enter the halls of the Zalarian Empire." "I come with respect, Your Majesty," Elias replied calmly. "I represent humanity and seek to build a bond of understanding and cooperation. We do not come to threaten your empire." Ciliara studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Words are easy. Actions are what define a being. Humans have a reputation for recklessness. Why should I trust you?" Elias did not hesitate. "Because I have faced challenges greater than any word can describe, and because I value life and honor above all else." There was a pause. The room seemed to hold its breath. Ciliara tilted her head, intrigued by his confidence. Many species would cower or bow, but Elias stood tall and unshaken. It was unusual. It was impressive. "Very well," the Queen said finally. "You will attend the ceremony tonight, observe our traditions. And I will watch you carefully. Any misstep will have consequences." Elias bowed slightly, acknowledging her authority. "Understood, Your Majesty." As the ceremony began, Elias moved among the Zalarians, noting their customs and practices. He observed the exchange of ceremonial gifts, the subtle hand gestures, and the flowing movements that seemed almost like dance. To the untrained eye, it might appear rigid, but Elias saw patterns, logic, and meaning behind every act. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the center of the hall. One of the Zalarian envoys, a young scholar, tripped on the polished floor, falling dangerously close to a decorative energy fountain. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Time seemed to slow. Elias acted instantly. With a speed that surprised even himself, he reached out and caught the scholar before they hit the fountain. The human's reflexes were sharp, precise, and completely controlled. A hush fell over the hall. Ciliara's eyes widened slightly. She had expected humans to be clumsy in such formal settings, yet this one had reacted with precision and calm. She could not hide her curiosity. "Impressive," she said, almost to herself. "You are more capable than I imagined." Elias helped the scholar to their feet. "Safety comes first," he said simply, "in every world, in every moment." The Queen's advisors whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some intrigued. Humans were indeed strange. They were new to galactic society, yet here was one who acted with the poise of a seasoned Zalarian warrior. After the ceremony, Ciliara invited Elias to a private dinner in the royal chamber, a rare honor for any outsider. The room was vast, adorned with iridescent panels that changed color with the lighting. A table floated above the floor, shimmering with a faint glow. "Sit, Commander," Ciliara commanded. Elias complied, studying the queen as he did. "You have survived your first day without offense," she said, "but that is not enough to earn my trust. I must know the depth of your abilities and the measure of your character." Elias leaned back slightly, his gaze calm. "I understand, Your Majesty. I do not seek blind trust. I seek understanding, and I believe actions speak louder than words." Ciliara studied him, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and something new, respect. Many rulers had underestimated humans. Many had dismissed them as fragile or unremarkable. Yet here was one who moved with quiet confidence, who acted with courage without seeking praise. The conversation continued late into the artificial night. They spoke of strategy, philosophy, and the differences between their species. Elias listened as much as he spoke, learning about Zalarian values, their history, and their dreams. In turn, he shared human perspectives, how adaptability, cooperation, and courage often outweighed sheer longevity or raw power. At one point, Ciliara leaned forward slightly. "You speak as though you have already lived many lives. How can one human know so much?" Elias smiled faintly. "I have trained for a long time, Your Majesty. I have faced dangers most would not survive. And I have learned that every life teaches something, every challenge strengthens something inside." Ciliara's expression softened. She had expected arrogance or ignorance, yet this human was humble yet strong. Perhaps there was a reason humans had survived and thrived despite their short histories compared to the Zalarians. Perhaps there was potential she had not yet considered. By the end of the evening, a bond had begun, not of friendship yet, but of recognition. Ciliara had seen his skill, his composure, and his courage. She had begun to wonder if humans were truly as ordinary as history books claimed. Elias, meanwhile, recognized the sharp intelligence behind Ciliara's careful observations. He could feel her curiosity, her careful evaluation of him. And he knew that in this galaxy, earning the respect of a queen was far more important than winning any battle. As he left the chamber to return to the horizon, Elias glanced back at the glowing palace. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed that his journey with the Zalarian Empire was only beginning. There were challenges ahead, tests that would push him to his limits, but he felt ready. Not because he was fearless, but because he trusted his mind, his training, and his ability to rise to the occasion. Above, the stars shone like countless eyes watching the events below. A galaxy full of wonders, dangers, and unknowns awaited. And for the first time, the human realized that perhaps he was not just a visitor here. Perhaps he was a key part of a story that had yet to unfold, a story that could change the course of empires. Back in her chamber, Queen Ciliara looked out over her city. She reflected on the human who had entered her life, so calm and capable, so full of courage. A quiet thought crossed her mind. This human, he may not just survive here, he may thrive, and perhaps he is the one I have been waiting for. The night passed in quiet contemplation. Both human and queen had much to consider. And as the first artificial lights of dawn shimmered across the palace, one truth became clear. Humanity had arrived in the Zalarian Empire, and Elias Kane was more than just a visitor. The stage was set. The galaxy was vast, but the story of a human among stars had only just begun. The day after Commander Elias Kane's arrival in the Zalarian capital began quietly, with the gentle hum of energy bridges and the soft movement of light over the towering structures. To the ordinary eye, everything seemed calm and orderly, but Queen Ciliara knew that appearances could be deceiving. Even in the peace of her city, there were forces at work that could disrupt everything she had built. Elias, meanwhile, moved with purpose through the city. He walked among the Zalarian scholars, engineers, and soldiers, observing, asking questions, and learning as much as he could. Unlike most humans, he did not assume he knew more than anyone else. Instead, he studied patterns, understood logic, and applied what he learned immediately. Every action had meaning, every observation was a lesson. At the same time, Queen Ciliara watched him. From her palace balcony, she noted how he moved among her people, not like an outsider who feared them, but like someone who belonged. There was a confidence in his steps, a calm precision in his gestures, and yet there was something deeper she could not name, something powerful. Her curiosity would not wait. She summoned him to a private chamber in the palace, one reserved for matters of state and security. When Elias entered, the room was filled with holographic displays of the Empire's energy grids, troop movements, and city infrastructure. "You have been observing my people," Ciliara said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. "Tell me what you see." Elias studied the displays carefully. "Your systems are efficient, energy distribution is well managed, and your defenses are strong. But there are vulnerabilities, minor gaps in the periphery, and reliance on a few key control nodes. If an enemy knew where to strike, they could exploit them." Ciliara raised an eyebrow. "And you would know this how, human?" "I have studied warfare and strategy," Elias replied simply. "I have also faced situations where speed, precision, and observation mattered more than numbers. Sometimes a small adjustment can prevent a disaster." The Queen paused. Humans were unpredictable, but this one spoke with authority. His words carried weight, and it was not arrogance that made her listen, it was experience. She realized she was beginning to respect him, though she would never admit it aloud. Before she could respond, alarms suddenly rang throughout the palace. Red warning lights flashed across the holographic panels. "Intruder alert," an automated voice announced. "Energy core breach in Sector 7. Ciliara's eyes narrowed. The energy core was the lifeblood of the capital. Any disruption could collapse entire districts within minutes. She quickly moved to a control station, but Elias was already at her side. "Step aside," he said calmly. His hands flew over the controls with practiced speed. "I need direct access to the core interface." Ciliara hesitated for only a moment. There was trust in his voice, and the urgency was real. She stepped back and watched as Elias worked, his fingers moving faster than most Zalarians could follow. Within seconds, he identified the breach, a misaligned energy conduit that could have caused a catastrophic overload. "Here," he said, pointing to the display. "This node is unstable. I can reroute the energy through a secondary channel, but we need to act quickly." Ciliara observed in awe as he executed the procedure flawlessly. Energy that had been surging dangerously was contained, rerouted, and stabilized in under a minute. The alarms silenced themselves. The chamber was quiet, save for the soft hum of machinery. Ciliara looked at Elias, her usual composure shaken just slightly. "You acted faster than any of my guards, faster than any Zalarian engineer I have trained personally." Elias shrugged modestly. "I am trained to handle emergencies. It is my duty to protect life, wherever it exists." For the first time, Ciliara saw him not just as a human diplomat, but as something extraordinary. There was a depth to him, a combination of knowledge, courage, and calm that was rare even among her own people. "You are not ordinary," she said quietly. "You are remarkable." Elias merely nodded. There was no need for pride in his actions. To him, saving lives and preventing disaster was simply what any capable person would do. Later that evening, the Queen invited him to walk through the city with her. The streets were calm now, but the recent incident had left a mark. Citizens whispered about the human who had prevented disaster, many curious about his identity and his origins. "You saved lives today," Ciliara said as they moved along a floating walkway above the city. "Tell me, Commander Kane, what drives you to act with such skill and courage?" Elias looked out at the city below, the soft glow of lights reflecting off the towers. "I grew up learning that preparation, courage, and observation matter more than power alone. I have seen what happens when people are unprepared. I have seen the consequences of hesitation. I do not want that to happen here." Ciliara considered his words carefully. Humans were new to the galaxy, yet here was one who seemed almost beyond ordinary. Her advisors had long dismissed humans as primitive, unpredictable, and short-lived compared to the Zalarians. But Elias' actions contradicted everything they had assumed. As they continued their walk, she asked him about his background. Elias spoke of his early life on Earth, of challenges that had tested him physically and mentally. He spoke of training, of leadership, and of moments where quick thinking had saved lives. Every story he told carried a quiet strength, a resilience that was hard to ignore. "You have seen much in your life," Ciliara said, her curiosity growing. "Yet you remain calm, measured, and respectful. It is unusual for humans." Elias smiled faintly. "It is not that we are fearless. It is that we learn to control fear. We learn to act when others hesitate. That is how we survive, how we thrive." Ciliara's expression softened. She realized that humans, despite their short history, possessed qualities that her people had not anticipated. Courage, adaptability, and determination could rival even the most experienced Zalarian. As night fell over the city, they arrived at a terrace overlooking the palace gardens. The air shimmered with energy lights, and the stars above seemed close enough to touch. For a moment, silence passed between them, a shared understanding of the strange bond forming. "Commander," Ciliara said at last, "you have shown me skill, courage, and wisdom. You have also shown that humans may not be as limited as we thought. I find myself reassessing my judgments." Elias looked at her calmly. "Judgments are natural, Your Majesty. But actions reveal truth, and I hope my actions show that humans can be allies, not threats." Ciliara nodded. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. "I think you may be more than an ally, perhaps. You are someone my empire can rely upon in ways I did not imagine." The following days were filled with training exercises, council meetings, and strategy discussions. Elias worked closely with Zalarian engineers and soldiers, observing weaknesses, suggesting improvements, and teaching new techniques that blended human ingenuity with Zalarian technology. His presence caused a ripple effect. Soldiers felt inspired, engineers found new solutions, and even minor disputes resolved themselves with his guidance. Yet, despite all the admiration and attention, Elias remained humble. He did not seek glory or recognition. He simply acted, guided by experience, logic, and a deep respect for life. And Ciliara watched him closely, recognizing that his quiet confidence was not arrogance, it was the mark of someone legendary. One evening, as the two stood on the palace balcony again, Ciliara spoke of a troubling rumor, a faction within the empire that had not welcomed human involvement and might seek to exploit weaknesses. Elias listened carefully, his mind already calculating possibilities and solutions. "Fear and suspicion are natural," he said calmly, "but preparation and courage can turn fear into strength. If they act against the empire, they will find that humanity is not so easy to dismiss." Ciliara's eyes gleamed with admiration. He had not only prevented disaster before, but now, with his calm and insight, he had begun to secure her empire against internal threats as well. She realized fully that this human was not ordinary. He carried the potential to shape the destiny of worlds, not through size, age, or technology, but through intelligence, courage, and determination. That night, as the city below rested, Ciliara stood alone in her chamber, reflecting. She had married a human consort out of political necessity, but now she saw him differently. He was more than a diplomat, more than a soldier. He was a legend in the making, someone who could protect her empire in ways she had never imagined. And somewhere deep within, she felt a stirring of pride, and perhaps something more. This human, with his calm strength and keen mind, had already begun to change the course of her life and the fate of her people. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and unknown challenges. But Queen Ciliara knew one thing for certain. With Elias Kane by her side, humanity and the Zalarian Empire together could face whatever came next. The story of the human who would become a legend had begun. And the Empire, unknowingly, was about to witness feats that would be remembered for centuries. The calm that had settled over the Zalarian capital was only temporary. From the far reaches of the galaxy, a shadow moved, a coalition of rival alien species who resented the prosperity and influence of the Zalarian Empire. They were powerful, cunning, and ruthless. For decades, they had watched the Empire grow and had waited for an opportunity to strike. Commander Elias Kane had sensed the tension even before reports arrived. His experience told him that large, sudden movements of star fleets were rarely accidental. When the first reports reached the palace, a fleet of unknown warships approaching the outer borders, Elias did not panic. Instead, he studied the projections, analyzing patterns, possible strategies, and weaknesses in the incoming forces. Queen Ciliara, though calm in public, felt a cold thread of worry. Her advisors debated the best course of action. Zalarian forces were vast and disciplined, but they had never faced an enemy that combined so many different species and tactics. Their strength was formidable, but so was their unpredictability. "You are certain, Commander Kane?" Ciliara asked as they stood over the holographic display of the approaching fleet. "Yes, Your Majesty," Elias replied. "They will attempt to surround the Empire from multiple directions. Their plan is to overwhelm us before we can respond fully." The Queen studied him, noting the calm determination in his eyes. He did not speak of fear or doubt. He spoke of facts and solutions. It was a rare combination, and she had already begun to trust it. "We will prepare," she said, "but this will not be an easy battle. We cannot afford mistakes." Elias nodded. "No battle is easy, Your Majesty, but preparation and strategy give us advantage. And we will find a way to turn their strengths against them." The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. Zalarian ships mobilized, energy shields were raised, and city defenses were reinforced. Elias moved among the troops and engineers, offering suggestions, teaching new tactics, and encouraging them to combine human ingenuity with Zalarian precision. During the first skirmish, the coalition fleet struck swiftly at a peripheral station. The Zalarians responded with their usual efficiency, but the enemy's tactics were unconventional, confusing even seasoned commanders. Elias observed calmly from the command deck. "They are testing us," he said to Ciliara. "Do not let them dictate the battle. We must set the pace, control the flow, and force them to react." Using a combination of Zalarian energy shields and human-inspired maneuvering strategies, he directed counterattacks that caught the coalition forces off guard. The enemy ships faltered, their formations disrupted. The Zalarian soldiers, inspired by his confidence, moved with renewed determination. Ciliara watched as Elias personally coordinated the defense. His mind worked like a machine, calculating, predicting, adapting. He was not just fighting, he was teaching the Empire how to fight smarter, faster, and more effectively. As the day progressed, small squads of elite Zalarian fighters faced boarding attempts from enemy ships. In one critical moment, a squad was trapped in a corridor surrounded by alien attackers. Without hesitation, Elias led a counterstrike, using a combination of precise energy bursts and tactical positioning to save them. Every move was deliberate, every decision measured. The Queen's eyes followed him closely. She had expected humans to be fragile, reckless, or short-sighted. Yet here was one who acted with the clarity and skill of a veteran general, commanding respect not through fear, but through competence. By the time the initial skirmish ended, the enemy had been repelled, but the coalition was still strong. This was only the beginning. "Commander Kane," Ciliara said as they surveyed the aftermath, "you have proven yourself in battle today. Your tactics are unusual for a human, yet they work." Elias shook his head slightly. "I did not come to prove myself. I came to protect life, Your Majesty. Victory is only meaningful if it saves people." Her admiration grew. This human, who had entered her empire only days ago, had already shown qualities that surpassed what she thought possible. And she began to understand the quiet truth. He was not just a capable soldier, he was extraordinary. As night fell over the battlefield, intelligence reports revealed the full scope of the threat. The coalition had not committed all its forces yet. Their main fleet, massive and heavily armed, was still advancing toward the capital. It was an assault unlike any the Empire had faced in centuries. Elias studied the projections carefully. "They expect us to follow traditional tactics," he said, "but we cannot fight this battle conventionally. We need to use every resource we have, combine technology and strategy in ways they do not expect." Ciliara watched him, realizing that his mind was already several steps ahead of even her most seasoned advisors. "What do you propose?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "We turn their strength against them, use their confidence and their assumptions to create openings, and we lead the soldiers not just with orders but with inspiration." Over the next hours, he worked tirelessly. Zalarian ships were repositioned, energy shields adjusted, and a series of diversion tactics prepared. He trained squads in rapid maneuvers, using methods unfamiliar to the Zalarians but effective. Every soldier who followed him felt confidence, a belief that even against overwhelming odds they could succeed. When the main assault began, the coalition struck with all their might. Their massive warships unleashed energy waves across the skies, testing the Empire's defenses. Yet Elia's strategies held firm. He predicted enemy movements, anticipated attacks, and guided countermeasures that turned the tide at critical moments. Ciliara observed from the command balcony as he moved between stations, issuing calm but decisive instructions. It was as though the entire battle followed his rhythm, his understanding of chaos and order guiding every response. At one critical point, an enemy warship breached the perimeter near the city's central energy hub. Zalarian defenses struggled to contain it. Ilias acted without hesitation. Using a combination of Xylarian technology and human ingenuity, he led a small strike team in a daring operation that neutralized the ship without risking the hub. The soldiers cheered as the crisis passed. Ciliara's admiration for Ilias reached new heights. She realized that his abilities were not luck or coincidence. They were the product of training, intelligence, and an indomitable spirit. As the battle raged on, the queen began to understand something profound. This human was not only a partner in governance, he was a living legend in the making. His presence changed the dynamics of the empire's defense. He inspired her people to believe in themselves and in the strength of their alliances. By the time the first wave of the coalition's fleet was repelled, the city remained intact. The enemy had underestimated the human skill, and it had cost them dearly. Reports from the front lines spoke of soldiers who had gained courage and clarity from his guidance, turning potential disasters into victories. Ciliara approached Ilias as he reviewed projections for the next wave of attacks. "You are remarkable," she said softly, almost in awe. "Your mind, your skill, your courage, I have underestimated humans. Perhaps I have underestimated you as well." Ilias glanced at her calmly. "I do not seek praise, Your Majesty, I seek results. If lives are saved, if the Empire stands strong, that is enough." She studied him for a long moment, realizing the truth in his words. Here was a being who had faced challenges far beyond what most could imagine, and yet remained humble. His humanity, his ability to care, to act, to inspire, was what made him exceptional. As the night ended and the city began to recover from the battle, Ciliara allowed herself a private thought. This human is more than a consort. He is a force that can shape the destiny of worlds. And I am fortunate to have him by my side. In the quiet moments after the battle, Ilias stood on the balcony looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and unknowns. But for the first time, he felt that he was exactly where he needed to be. The Xylarian Empire faced a challenge unlike any other, and he was ready to meet it. Not with arrogance, but with skill, courage, and the determination to protect life, no matter the cost. The first wave of the galactic challenge had been met and survived. But the larger threat loomed, massive and relentless, and the Empire would need all its strength, all its strategy, and the extraordinary talent of its human consort to endure the trials ahead. For Queen Ciliara, it was a revelation. The human she had married was not just capable, he was legendary, and the galaxy, whether it knew it or not, was about to witness the full measure of his might. The story of Ilias Cain and the Xylarian Empire had reached a turning point. Battles had begun, courage had been tested, and legends were quietly forming in the shadows of the stars. The calm after the first wave of the coalition's attack was deceptive. The enemy had retreated only temporarily, regrouping far in the depths of space. Their main fleet, larger and more powerful than anything the Xylarian Empire had faced in centuries, was advancing toward the capital. Reports warned that their assault would be unstoppable if met with conventional defense. Queen Ciliara stood over the city from her palace balcony, her eyes scanning the stars. She could see the faint shimmer of approaching warships in the distance. Her mind, usually sharp and unshakable, felt a flicker of doubt. Even with all her centuries of experience, this battle was unprecedented. Ilias Cain stood beside her, calm as ever. His eyes studied the same points in space, already calculating possibilities, angles, and opportunities. He did not speak immediately, he did not need to. Ciliara knew that when Ilias remained quiet, he was already acting in his mind. Finally, he turned to her. "Your Majesty, this is not a battle we can win by conventional means. Their strength is overwhelming, but we can turn it to our advantage. We can use their overconfidence against them." She raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Ilias pointed to the projections of the enemy fleet. "They assume we will follow traditional tactics. They will come in waves, aiming to destroy key installations. If we can anticipate their moves and strike where they least expect, we can neutralize their numbers without direct confrontation. And I will lead the strike personally." Ciliara studied him. The thought of a human leading an attack against such a massive fleet was terrifying, but she trusted him. She had already witnessed his skill in the first skirmish, and it had changed everything she believed about humans. "Very well," she said. "Lead then. Show me the extent of your abilities." The preparations began immediately. Xylarian engineers adapted their energy weapons and shields to Ilias' strategy, integrating human innovations he had introduced in just a few days. Squads of elite soldiers trained under his guidance, learning to combine speed, precision, and unconventional tactics. When the day of the main assault arrived, the skies above the capital darkened with the shadow of thousands of enemy ships. Energy beams streaked across space as the fleet advanced in tight formation, confident in its power. Ilias moved swiftly between command stations, issuing instructions with calm authority. He coordinated strikes, adjusted energy shields, and relayed movements to his squads on the front lines. Every decision was deliberate, every action precise. The Xylarian soldiers, inspired by his confidence, moved with new purpose, executing maneuvers they had never attempted before. The first wave of enemy ships breached the outer perimeter. Conventional Xylarian tactics would have resulted in heavy losses. But Ilias had already anticipated this. Using a combination of human-inspired feints and Xylarian technology, he guided small strike teams to intercept key ships, disabling their engines and turning them against their own fleet. Ciliara watched from the palace command balcony as her consort personally piloted a strike ship, weaving through enemy fire with extraordinary precision. His maneuvers were unlike anything Xylarian pilots had seen, sudden, unpredictable, yet perfectly calculated. Ships that had seemed invincible fell under his strategy, one after another. The queen could hardly believe her eyes. She had married a human out of political necessity, but now she understood the truth. Ilias Kane was not just capable, he was legendary. His intellect, courage, and skill combined to make him a force that could challenge even the greatest fleets in the galaxy. As the battle intensified, the enemy adapted, trying to anticipate his moves. But Ilias was always one step ahead. He coordinated multiple attacks simultaneously, using the enemy's own formations against them. Ships collided, fleets faltered, and the coalition began to lose cohesion. In one critical moment, a massive enemy warship broke through the capital's outer defenses, heading straight for the central energy hub. Ciliara's heart raced. If that ship struck the hub, the entire city could collapse. Ilias acted instantly. He piloted a small craft toward the warship, moving faster than anyone had thought possible. Using precise calculations, he navigated through concentrated enemy fire, reaching the ship's weak point. With a controlled burst of energy, he disabled its engines and weapons, sending it spinning harmlessly into space. The Xylarian soldiers cheered, their morale soaring. The queen herself felt a surge of awe. This human had done what her most experienced generals could not. He had turned a potential catastrophe into a victory, but Ilias was not done. He knew that the coalition fleet still posed a massive threat. With a calm voice over the communication network, he issued new orders. Xylarian ships formed coordinated strike units, moving with speed and precision under his guidance. Energy waves targeted key points in the enemy fleet, disrupting communications and propulsion systems. Every strike was calculated to maximize effect while minimizing risk. The battle raged across the skies, but gradually the coalition began to falter. Their attacks lost coordination, their formations broke apart, and their confidence wavered. Ilias' strategy was relentless and flawless, a perfect combination of human ingenuity and Xylarian technology. Ciliara watched in quiet admiration as Ilias moved from one crisis to another, never losing focus, never hesitating. She realized that she had not merely married a human consort, she had married a legend in the making, a being whose courage and intellect could shape the fate of entire civilizations. By the end of the day, the coalition fleet had been repelled. The Xylarian capital remained intact, its citizens safe, its defenses stronger than ever. Reports from the front lines praised Ilias' leadership, his bravery, and his unmatched skill in both strategy and combat. The queen approached him as he reviewed the final projections of enemy retreat. "You have done more than protect the empire," she said softly. "You have inspired it. Your actions today will be remembered for centuries." Ilias looked at her calmly. "I only did what was necessary, Your Majesty. The lives of your people and the safety of the Empire mattered. That is enough." Ciliara shook her head slightly, a small smile forming on her lips. "You underestimate yourself. Humans may be new to this galaxy, but you have shown that courage, skill, and intelligence can rival the greatest empires. Today, you proved that legends exist, and that you are one of them. For the first time, Elias allowed himself a small smile. He did not seek glory, but he accepted the queen's recognition with quiet grace. He had always believed that actions mattered more than words, yet he understood that acknowledgement from someone as wise and powerful as Ciliara was meaningful. As the stars above the capital glittered, the queen and her human consort stood together, overlooking the city. The battle had been won, but the galaxy remained vast and full of dangers. And yet, with Elias Kane by her side, Ciliara felt a renewed confidence. Together, they could face anything. In the quiet moments after the battle, Ciliara reflected on the human who had changed the course of her empire in just a few days. She had expected a diplomat, a strategist perhaps, but she had found a leader, a hero, and a force unlike any other. The city below slowly returned to normal. Citizens moved cautiously through the streets, their eyes wide with admiration for the human who had saved them. Tales of his courage and skill began to spread, whispered from one district to another. Humanity, for the first time, had proven itself on a scale that even the Zalarians could not ignore. Elias remained at the command center, analyzing the aftermath of the battle, preparing for possible counterattacks. He was always alert, always thinking, always ready. His mind worked in ways that combined logic, experience, and instinct, a combination that few in the galaxy could match. Ciliara watched him, realizing that her empire had gained more than a consort. They had gained a protector, a strategist, and a legend who could face threats that even she could not anticipate. And somewhere deep within, she felt a quiet pride, and perhaps something more personal that she had such a being at her side. The night stretched on, quiet and still. The battle had ended, but the story of Elias Kane and the Zalarian Empire was far from over. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns, and the Coalition's retreat was only temporary. Yet one truth had become clear. With courage, skill, and determination, even a single human could change the course of history. Queen Ciliara stood silently, looking at the stars, and whispered almost to herself, "He is no ordinary human. He is a legend." And indeed, across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. A human had arrived in the Zalarian Empire, and he had turned the tide of war. What had started as diplomacy had become something far greater, the emergence of a hero whose actions would inspire countless generations. The stage was set for even greater challenges ahead. But one thing was certain. Humanity, represented by Elias Kane, had already proven that it could stand among the stars and leave a mark that no alien empire could ignore. The legend had begun. The aftermath of the Coalition's attack left the Zalarian Empire shaken but stronger than ever. For days, the city pulsed with repair and renewal. Soldiers drilled with renewed precision, and citizens whispered tales of the human who had changed the course of battle. Commander Elias Kane moved among them calmly, overseeing recovery efforts, coordinating defenses, and preparing for the possibility of a return attack. Yet, despite the work ahead, there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. Queen Ciliara stood on her palace balcony, looking out over the city as energy bridges glowed in the early light. Elias joined her, silent for a moment, observing the city's revival. She had learned something remarkable over the past days. Humans, despite their short history, possessed courage and ingenuity that could rival centuries of experience. And this one human in particular had proven that legends were not born, they were made. "Commander," she said softly, breaking the quiet, "you have done more than I imagined possible. The Empire owes you a debt that cannot be measured." Elias shook his head, his expression calm. "I only did what was necessary, Your Majesty. My actions were for the people, not for recognition." She smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and respect in her eyes. "And yet the people have recognized it anyway. They speak of your courage, your skill, and your wisdom. You have inspired hope where doubt once reigned." Elias glanced down at the city. Hope is the greatest weapon of all. A people who believe in themselves cannot be defeated, even by the largest fleet. For the first time, Ciliara allowed herself to reflect on how far humanity had come in her empire. Humans were young compared to Zalarians, but their adaptability, courage, and determination were unmatched. Elias embodied these qualities in every way. He had not only protected the empire, he had elevated it, teaching them new ways to fight, think, and survive. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Coalition fleet were regrouping in the far reaches of space, unaware of the changes they had inspired. Zalarian scouts reported that their morale had dropped sharply. their formations fractured by the unexpected tactics of the human consort. The galaxy had taken notice. Humans were not weak, reckless, or primitive. They were capable, courageous, and intelligent. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Elias and Ciliara spent hours reviewing the battle data, refining defenses, and planning for potential threats. He shared strategies for faster repairs, stronger energy shields, and efficient troop deployment. His understanding of both human and Zalarian systems allowed him to bridge the gap between two civilizations, creating solutions neither could have developed alone. As evening fell, the Queen invited him to the palace gardens, a place of quiet beauty where soft energy lights illuminated trees that shimmered in multiple colors. Here, away from the bustle of recovery, she allowed herself to speak more openly. "Elias," she said, "I have seen many leaders in my life, generals, diplomats, warriors, but none have impressed me as you have. You are extraordinary." Elias met her gaze calmly. "I am only a human, your majesty. I do what must be done, that is all." She shook her head slightly. "Do not hide behind humility. What you did was far beyond what anyone expected. You led battles, saved lives, and inspired hope. You have changed the empire and the galaxy. That is not ordinary." For a moment they stood in silence, the soft glow of the garden lights reflecting off their faces. Ciliara realized something profound. She had married a human consort out of duty, yet she now recognized him as more than a partner. He was a protector, a strategist, and a legend whose actions would be remembered for generations. Days turned into weeks as the empire stabilized. Repairs were completed, defenses strengthened, and the citizens regained confidence. Reports from neighboring systems praised the Zalarian leadership, with special acknowledgement of Elias Kane, the human who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. One morning, a delegation of young Zalarian cadets approached the palace. They had trained under Elias' guidance during the battle, and now they wanted to learn more from him. He walked among them, demonstrating tactics, sharing lessons, and encouraging them to think creatively. The cadets were inspired, their eyes shining with admiration. "You are the reason we can believe in ourselves," one young cadet said, looking up at Elias. "We will do everything we can to protect the Empire just as you did." Elias nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Belief in yourself is the first step. The rest comes from practice, courage, and teamwork. You can achieve more than you think if you never give up." Ciliara observed this quietly from a distance. Her respect and admiration had grown beyond measure. This human, new to her world and the galaxy, had proven that courage, intelligence, and heart could overcome even the greatest threats. She realized fully that she had married someone extraordinary. Later, as the Queen and Elias walked through the palace corridors, she spoke again. "You have secured the Empire, Commander Kane, but more than that, you have secured a place in history. Humanity is no longer unknown. You have shown the galaxy what we are capable of." Elias remained calm. "History will remember many, Your Majesty. I only hope my actions help others see that courage, intelligence, and determination matter, no matter where someone comes from." The Queen smiled. "And they will. You are already a legend, not just for humans, but for all who live in this empire. Your courage, your wisdom, and your actions have changed lives. You have proven that humanity can stand among the stars, not just as visitors, but as equals." As evening fell over the palace, the city below shimmered with light. The empire had endured, and the human who had become a hero stood beside its ruler. Together, they represented a partnership that could face any challenge the galaxy might bring. In private moments, Ciliara reflected on how much her perception had changed. She had once seen humans as fragile and inexperienced, yet she now knew they possessed strength that surpassed her expectations. And in Elias Kane, she had found a being whose courage and intellect were unmatched. He was not just a consort. He was a protector, a teacher, and a legend. One quiet night, as they stood together on the balcony, Ciliara spoke softly. "I once doubted humanity. I believed they were small, short-lived, and limited. But now I see that courage, intelligence, and determination define greatness, not age, size, or history." Elias looked out at the stars. "Humans have always survived by adapting, learning, and never giving up. That is how we thrive. And now I hope our people and yours will continue to grow stronger together." Ciliara nodded. "Together we will protect this empire. Together we will ensure that peace endures. And together we will face whatever challenges come next, side by side." The stars shimmered above them, reflecting the light of the city below. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns and dangers, yet the future seemed brighter than ever. Humanity had proven itself capable, and Elias Kane had proven that one individual, guided by courage, skill, and heart, could change the fate of worlds. The legend of Elias Kane would be told for centuries. He had arrived as a human consort, but he had become a protector of an empire, a teacher of warriors, and a symbol of hope. His actions had shown the galaxy that humans were not merely newcomers. They were a force to be reckoned with, capable of feats no one could predict. Queen Ciliara placed a hand on his arm, feeling the steady strength of the man beside her. "You are more than I imagined, Elias, not just a hero but a legend, and I am proud to have you by my side." Elias smiled faintly. "I am honored, Your Majesty. And I will continue to do what is necessary to protect life and to ensure the Empire thrives." Together, they watched the city, the stars, and the galaxy beyond. Battles had been fought, victories won, and threats overcome. But the journey was far from over. The galaxy would continue to challenge them, test them, and push them to their limits. Yet now, humanity had a place among the stars, and the legend of a human consort who had saved an empire was secure. And in that quiet moment, Queen Ciliara realized that she had not just married a human. She had married a force of courage, wisdom, and heroism that could shape the destiny of the galaxy itself. The story of Elias Kane, the human who became a legend, had reached its first great conclusion. The Empire was safe, its people inspired, and the galaxy had learned an important truth. Courage, intelligence, and heart could surpass even the most powerful enemies. The stage was set for a new era, one where humans and Zalarians stood together, guided by a man whose actions had proven that even the smallest among the stars could leave an everlasting mark. And so, as the lights of the Zalarian capital shimmered beneath the stars, the galaxy remembered the day a human consort became a legend, and humanity's place among the stars was forever secured.